So Article 12, the school construction bond. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $54,250,179 gross budget to finance the major addition, reconstruction, and renovation project for the Clark Wilkins Elementary School located at 14 Foundry Street, Amherst, New Hampshire, and 80 Boston Post Road, Amherst, New Hampshire, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $54,250,179 of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33:1, et cetera, as amended, to authorize the school board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, to authorize the school board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity and other terms thereof, and to authorize the school board to take any action or to pass any other vote relative thereto, and further to raise and appropriate an additional sum of $1,356,255 for the first year's interest payment on the bond. This requires a 3/5 ballot vote in order to pass. So with that, I'd like to call on the school board to make their presentation.
Sure.
Thank you, Victoria.
Yep. I'd like to introduce myself again, Victoria Parisi, the Vice Chair of the Amherst School Board. I'll let you know ahead of time, this part of the presentation is lengthy and I will be reading my notes, so please bear with me and make sure that you keep an eye on the screen for the slides. The Amherst School Board is presenting the construction of a new elementary school on the March 14th ballot. The total bond amount will be $54,250,179. I am proud to present information regarding this article and how a new building becomes a tailwind in the Amherst School District's improvement journey rather than a headwind. Since 2017, the Amherst School District and administration have made significant strides in planning for our facilities. Beginning with the external capital needs assessment that analyzed the 20-year cost to operate the schools, the SAU board then formed JPAC, the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee, to review and report on the status of the facilities with an eye to the educational future of Amherst, as well as to the impact of taxpayers in the future. JPAC provides recommendations to the Amherst School Board, who ultimately determines what goes on the ballot. In 2020, once voters approved the cost for investigating options for long-term solutions, LaValle Brenzinger architects were hired to develop a district-wide master plan for the facility options. During that year, a variety of options for ways to address the aging buildings and space constraints were discussed. Eventually, after analyzing all of the options, JPAC brought a recommendation to build a new elementary school to the board and to renovate the middle school. This is what appeared on last year's ballot. This year, after close to another year of further review and revision of cost estimates, the board has decided to only bring forth a warrant article to build a new elementary school. A long-term plan for aging facilities was a focus in 2017. The district needed three things: a plan for completing and funding facilities maintenance for aging buildings, a plan that addressed enrollment seen in schools and future projections, and a plan that addressed federal mandates for special needs programming. The firm of On-Site Insight was hired to complete a capital needs assessment. This report identified every piece of the facilities, its expected useful life, and a cost estimate associated with in-kind replacement. In the fall of 2019, a meeting was held at Sohegan. Board members from each of the SAU 39 boards, the finance committee members, community members, and administration were in attendance. With the On-Site Insight report as the focus, we discussed how we would financially support the needs of the SAU. We discussed bonding projects and saving over several years using the Capital Reserve Fund. It was determined that the first step was to determine the grade configuration of the Amherst schools. The grade configuration conversation would be a central topic to the master planning work. 4 actionable goals came out of the 2019 Fall Facility Summit. They are to create an editable list of capital needs assessment, determine funding levels per school, an annual project management through executing projects and withdrawing from the expendable trust fund, and to create a capital expenditure plan. Over the last 4 years, all of these steps have been accomplished by the administration and the Amherst School Board. Approved as part of the March 2020 ballot, LaValle Brensinger architects were hired to complete a district long-range facilities plan known as the master plan. The goals of their work included understanding current space issues, strengthening curriculum, right-sizing the facilities, increasing flexibility, and planning for adaptability. It was at this time that the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee, administration, staff, and community provided feedback to LaValle Brensinger architects about possible solutions to address the aging facilities and space concerns. The list on the screen represents the discussions that took place. All of these options were discussed. None were ruled out without thoughtful consideration by multiple groups of stakeholders. There are a variety of reasons that the options listed on the previous slide are not what the Amherst School Board is presenting for the March 14th ballot. Clark, Wilkins, and AMS are all operating at 90 to 95% capacity. Once a school is operating at 85% capacity, the programming for student education is determined by the building. Increased expenses of some options do not make them ideal solutions. This includes the purchase of a new site, the use of the Birch Park site, or adding a second story to the current buildings at both Clark and Wilkins. Developmentally, fifth graders are elementary age appropriate, and developmentally, eighth graders are middle school age appropriate. The use of the Sohegan Annex has many complexities that were analyzed during this process. These have also been analyzed by various boards over the past 20 years. It has been once again reconfirmed that this is not a long-term solution. While the focus has been on the elementary and middle school buildings, it's always important to keep in mind the students who go to school there. Sohegan High School will educate those students in the years to come. In just 4 years, if all Sohegan students were taught in the main building, the building would operate over 95% capacity. From experience at Clark, Wilkins, and AMS, reaching over 90% capacity is not what's best for Amherst and Mount Vernon students for programming and school environments. The entirety of the annex is likely not going to become available based on the professional enrollment data. The use of the annex would be solving one problem to create the same problem elsewhere in the district. Additionally, keep in mind this does not solve the issue of antiquated systems that are due for replacement soon. Over the years, portables have been used to solve space constraint issues in Amherst. Portables are not a favorable solution to address space needs. Portables are temporary solutions constructed with low-grade materials, and they're not a long-term investment. Depreciation becomes an operating expense, and it does not increase capital improvements. There is a lengthy lead time to receive portables, and portables do not have a controlled main entrance sequence. There's a loss of academic instructional time when students travel between buildings for interventions, specials, and nurse visits. And custodial and maintenance costs result from mud, salt, and snow that is tracked back and forth from building to portable. Portables also do not allow for fresh air circulation. If Clark is not used as a school, it may be repurposed for the residents of Amherst. One elementary building configuration is ideal. It allows for bus drop-off and pickup point, saving time, money, and traffic. It's an efficient use of staff time, no longer wasted commuting between two buildings. We're able to pool talent and resources in one building, and there's one less transition for students. Efficiencies are also gains that are not monetary, including staff culture, and each school would have its own kitchen in this setup. After the extensive master planning process was conducted, 3 options were presented. These options were discussed at several community sessions leading up to the 2020 Amherst School Board bond hearing. Option A involved the cost to maintain the existing structures and augment with portables. Option B involved a major renovation refurbishment, and in addition with costs based on program square footage. Option C was a new building. The estimates provided were preliminary order of magnitude costs based on the defined space needs and current construction values at the time. The bond warrant article is an important step in the Amherst School District journey. I'd like to move on to discussing the project goals. When the recent work of analyzing the facilities began, the following categories of goals rose to the surface. Address aging end-of-life systems with energy efficient systems, utilize existing sites efficiently, provide secure and technology-rich spaces, and provide adequate, flexible teaching spaces. Life safety systems at the elementary school are at end of life. These systems are due for replacement in the capital needs assessment. HVAC systems are at the top of this list. They're not stable or efficient. When HVAC is not dependable in a school, there is a concern about heating the space for occupation during the school year, as well as flooding from burst pipes. Higher quality replacement HVAC units are energy efficient and cost effective. In 2023, the administration and school board would like to improve the entrance sequence at the elementary school. This includes housing all students within the building, as well as altering the configuration of the main entrance to have greater control of visitors. The building simply does not have the space for staff to deliver the best practices to students, including full-day kindergarten and development of local special programs. The physical space that is available for our students is limited. Amherst has utilized portable classrooms at the 3 school sites over the last 2 decades to support overcrowding in the main educational buildings. There are currently still 80+ students in the portables at Wilkins. There are also undampered grill openings in the classroom corridor walls and non-rated corridor doors for storage room uses plus miscellaneous items. Years of discussion have utilized one primary lens for planning for our facilities. How do we augment or design spaces that provide the greatest opportunity and educational benefit for the children of this district? Factors such as lighting, indoor air quality, climate control, acoustics, and noise play a critical role in the student's ability to focus and learn new information. This board and the district rely on research and evidence-based instructional practices. A new building becomes a tailwind in our improvement journey rather than a headwind. The new building would increase the ability to implement great instruction in the following ways: increased teacher collaboration space, private and dedicated office space for school counselors and administrators, dedicated unified arts space. The current practice to meet enrollment requirements involves moving a unified arts teacher onto a cart to push into classroom learning spaces. This leads to loss in instructional time and creates disruption and noise for neighboring classrooms. Current programming is driven by lunch schedules and the limitations of having one large communal space for lunch, physical education, and assemblies. Intervention space for one-on-one programming is shared, high noise, and high distraction. In the new building, these programs have dedicated and appropriate space. Library space in the new building supports the board and administration's goal to improve literacy acquisition throughout the district. And one building creates efficiencies for administrators, teachers, and supporting facilities and food service staff. Throughout this process, we have been asked how the district will measure the impact of a new building. We will look for reduced staff and student absences, demonstrating the impact of an effective HVAC system, improve standardized test scores and classroom metrics, meaning how students are performing in the classroom, both teacher observation of student performances and assessment scores. There may also be qualitative feedback too, such as doing science experiments more often or having the ability to do more small group work. We will also look for increased employment applications and the possibility of an increase in new students. The Amherst School Board seeks to make a strategic investment in the facilities of the Amherst School District. The expected life of Wilkins and AMS buildings is 50 years. Wilkins is 55 and AMS is closely approaching 50. In Amherst, short-term solutions have been favored by the voters. Over the last 30 years, this includes portable trailers and small additions. Larger initiatives, such as building an upper elementary school to alleviate crowding, have narrowly failed. This brings us to the situation that we're in today. Systems will require significant funding to replace within the next 15 years. Amherst School Board is dedicated to funding maintenance that has been identified in the 2017 Capital Needs Assessment through the existing Capital Reserve Fund. Once a new elementary is built, the district will receive a maintenance program from the construction management firm. This will ensure proper maintenance, maintain consistency despite inevitable board and administration turnover, and allow future leaders to plan and budget for capital improvements. Here are some pictures from Clark School. The picture in the center on the slide shows where kindergarten students receive their lunches in the hallway. There's no kitchen at Clark, so meals are driven over from Wilkins in a personal car. You'll also notice that the carts are being stored in this hallway, as well as book storage on the bench near the memorial brick wall. Continuing with the theme of an area doing double duty, the MultiPurpose Room is serving as the lunchroom and the location of all specials: art, music, library, and physical education. The other spaces in the building have been utilized for classroom space and interventions. While we're speaking about Clark, I think it's important to note that a portion of the building, which is the MPR, was partially funded through private donations when it became clear that a multipurpose room was needed at that site. The addition included the multipurpose room and a classroom, once used for music and art. Without this space, all of those specials and lunch would have to take place in kindergarten classrooms, and the specialized special education program that is delivered in this room would be without a classroom. Here we are at Wilkins down the street. In the middle, you see a technology teacher pushing a cart through the hallway. Because of the press on classroom space, the building no longer has a technology or a computer lab. Instead, the teacher travels to classrooms with devices on a cart. It's been estimated that a large portion of her day is inefficiently being used to move to classrooms. This change occurred when one of the portables housing 2 classrooms of 4th graders caught fire in 2018. The building was eventually reopened, and the portables pictured now house 4 classrooms of over 80 students. Again, physical space is a large concern in all of these pictures. The picture on the left shows intervention space that is shared by multiple staff and groups of students throughout the day, oftentimes receiving support simultaneously. Last year's conference room has been reassigned for student space. So the picture on the right shows the only conference room table in the building. This is located in an area behind the stage. The stage is also needed for student lunch space. This room also holds many pieces of curriculum. Space that was available for book storage just a few years ago is no longer available. Leadership and staff are trying to leverage every inch of space. Storage closets are currently used as office space. In this case, it's that of a school psychologist. The school counseling team shares one office. School storage of curriculum supplies is now in the hallway leading to the stage. They have maximized every inch of the building, and we are at a breaking point. The picture on the top left of the screen is one of the undampered grill openings in the classroom corridor walls where smoke and fire barriers have been compromised. On the JPAC website and the SAU 39 YouTube page, there are walkthrough tours for anyone interested in seeing more pictures. Now to mention the Amherst Middle School. 2 issues that the Amherst Middle School is addressing, that the Amherst School Board is addressing at the Amherst Middle School include water damage and space constraints. On the left, you'll see 3 pictures representing water damage from the original roof and the failing HVAC unit ventilators. The other 3 pictures show use of small storage areas as offices for staff and adaptive equipment being stored in an open hallway. Article 12 includes plans for the elementary level only. Through conscious savings over the last 4 years in the Capital Reserve Fund and paying particular attention to the capital needs assessment, we have identified needs and a long-term funding plan to take necessary steps in facility improvements at Amherst Middle School. During this school year, Amherst Middle School has experienced water damage from roof leaks and unit ventilator floods. These items were previously identified as part of the 2017 capital needs assessment and were part of the list of projects to be funded through the Capital Reserve funding. The board has approved funding for the design work related to these projects, and the design work has begun. This will be a phased approach to first replace the original sections of the roof and the ventilators that are in most need of repair. The roof and unit ventilator replacement project is anticipated to cost more than $1.3 million and will take the first step in making AMS watertight. A more comprehensive plan is laid out in the voter's guide detailing Article 18 and will be delivered to the board in the spring. We have needed space as a district for a long time. Space constraints have been absorbed by the use of temporary portables. The space constraints at AMS will be lessened by moving 5th grade to the elementary school while not requiring an addition at the Amherst Middle School. Should Article 12 pass and the elementary project begin, the plans for updating the systems at AMS that are noted in the capital needs assessment and living document work will be funded through the Capital Reserve Fund. A new elementary school building would allow the Capital Reserve Fund to focus on improvements at the middle school rather than the need for those annual funds to be spread across the district. As the pictures have shown, space is needed at Clark, Wilkins, and AMS. The funny thing about time is that 1970 doesn't seem like 50 years ago. but requirements of space have changed significantly since the buildings were built. The district has needed additional space for a number of years. In order to maintain, the administration has utilized temporary portables, moved staff and intervention space into closets, tripled and quadrupled interventionists like reading, math, and speech, and placed integrated and arts specialists on carts moving from classroom to classroom. When an integrated arts teacher travels to an individual classroom with their materials on a cart, as you saw in the picture, it's inefficient, often disrupts neighboring classrooms, and it does change the curriculum offerings that students receive. The New Hampshire DOE requirements for space have changed since the buildings were originally designed. The proposed project allows the district to adequately meet current DOE requirements without sacrificing storage closets and intervention space to do so. Special needs education requirements have also changed dramatically over the last 50 years. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act requires public school districts to offer support and program options for students with a variety of needs. The district is also required to provide these services to Amherst children as early as age 3 before entering kindergarten. These programs currently encompass 8 classrooms across the district with a need for additional space. A community survey conducted in 2020 found that class sizes were a strong concern among respondents. At the time, class sizes were among the highest in the state. Amherst School District has addressed staffing to meet the desired student-teacher ratio over the last 4 years. Class sizes are now within a reasonable range, but this exacerbates the sacrifices to educational space. When one classroom is needed for another general education section, another program has to compromise. Since class size ratios have been addressed, additional teachers are not projected as a result of the building project. The addition or reduction of staff will be driven by enrollment demands. Enrollment projections are steady and allow the team to feel confident in the size of the proposed project. The graphic on the screen highlights our expected class sizes for FY24. The building has been designed after a thorough discussion of programming needs with administration and staff. The classroom design has a capacity of 889 students, while the core spaces are designed to accommodate 1,079 students. A professional external enrollment report was completed to confirm enrollment data and the sizing of the proposed facility project for the New Hampshire DOE State Building Aid application. NESDEC, the New England School Development Council, was hired to create this enrollment report. The report provides 10-year projections and will be updated annually by NESDEC. The size of the building design is in line with the projected enrollment now and in the future and provides flexibility for the type of needs that arise within the school building. Though this is not anticipated by the professional enrollment reports, should a need arise for additional space, the building will be constructed to accommodate additional classrooms on the second floor. This is a graphical representation of historic and projected enrollment levels by the current grade configuration. Something I'd like to highlight is that enrollment has increased by approximately 100 students since 2015 at the kindergarten through 4th grade level. After the 2022 bond failed, Amherst School Board met with community members, SAU administrators, JPAC, and the hired architectural and construction professionals. 3 goals were realized. They are to maintain the 2020 facility project goals with better communication, as focusing on mechanical and electrical plumbing systems, health and safety, student learning, and space constraints, to minimize the cost to taxpayers, and to address the Amherst middle school projects in a different way rather than a total renovation. We understand that this is an expensive project that will greatly impact taxpayers. We have focused on the original goals, ensuring that we do so in a manner that can gain some community support. The proposed project will create a 1-building elementary school to house preschool through 5th grade. Amherst Middle School will house grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. This configuration is developmentally appropriate and allows AMS to have appropriate space for students without requiring an addition, which would be an added expense that the board and JPAC did not wish to present to the community. This configuration was determined to be the most appropriate from a financial standpoint, as well as supporting the students. The reconfiguration will continue to provide adequate space to conduct special services while offering privacy and dignity for every student. It continues to offer music, art, and PE to kindergarten students, and it will increase the capacity in the cafeteria and gym. The consolidation of Clark and Wilkins leaves many wondering about the future of Clark. JPAC identified this question early on in the process and developed a committee to engage with the community in 2021. The idea of the committee was to generate ideas for what the future of the building could be, to discuss potential outcomes and concerns, and be sure to include the residents of Amherst in the future plan for the site. With that being said, Clark will remain a school with classroom space during the construction phase until the 26-27 school year. In the long term, a number of possibilities exist. Should the bond pass, community input will be taken into consideration and formal discussions regarding possibilities between the Amherst School Board and the Board of Selectmen will take place. Now it's time to move on to the conceptual designs, which are the work of Banwell Associates, a New England architectural firm with offices in New Hampshire and Vermont, and with a proven track record of success with school facility projects. The elementary building will include a renovation to the multipurpose room, including asbestos abatement, replacement of flooring, doors, and windows, technology upgrades, security upgrades, and a new kitchen. It will also include a new addition making up for the bulk of the building. Significant effort has been put into the programming to ensure the size of the building is adequate for current and future enrollment. This means that administrators at the buildings have discussed what is needed. The programming has been simplified to include the meat and potatoes of what is needed. Not everyone gets what they wish for. Everyone makes compromises. The detailed programming document is available at jfac.sau39.org. Here you see the repurposed multipurpose room on the left, maintaining the traditional feel of Amherst. We consider this one step in the design process. This is not the end, as the design is an evolving effort and it will continue to be refined. There will be several outside play spaces and areas for different age groups. Playgrounds will be located on the south side of the building with nearby classroom hallway entrances. The grove, wherever the log is played, will remain. There will be a space in the backfield for additional outdoor classrooms. And this side of the building also shows the parent drop-off loop, which will accommodate 75 car line. This is an aerial view from the Upper Wilkins Field. You'll notice the bus and car loop that are designed to bring traffic off of Boston Post Road. It includes 2 lanes. And again, this is conceptual and it shows a courtyard providing additional daylight to classrooms. This is the initial site plan that was developed with civil engineering firm of Ty and Bond, who have completed a number of successful school projects in New England. It's a priority of the administration and board to have multiple play areas for multiple grades included in the design. The access road to Jones Road is likely needed for emergency use and may be used to alleviate Boston Post Road traffic for certain uses at specific times of day, pending further traffic studies. The board has been in touch with the town committees who plan to review the traffic in the area over the next several years, and their 2022 report cites favorably for the combination of the 2 school buildings. There's increased parking for school and community events, as well as parking for the recreation activities that take place on Upper Wilkins Field. Let's take a look inside the building. The left side of the picture is Boston Post Road, so the yellow rectangle at the top left of the screen represents the repurposed multipurpose room. With the addition of a proper gymnasium, after-hours recreation opportunities will be expanded. The rooms at the front of the building will be accessible for this purpose, while the back of the building will be secure. Per DOE regulations, classrooms for the youngest students are on the first floor in the blue areas. The courtyard allows for 8 classrooms on both of the floors to have windows for natural light and airflow, which has a positive impact on learning. As we go upstairs, you'll notice several staircases. Special service spaces will be located on both floors close to the classrooms, and you'll see additional natural light from the courtyard. The design shows 7 classrooms per grade level with 4 additional flex classrooms for years with additional classroom is needed or when enrollment population needs require flexibility in the floor plans. Should Article 12 pass, design refinement and input sessions for community, staff, administration, and board will take place over the following 10 months. Construction is expected to begin in spring of 2024 with completion in time for the 26-27 school year. During construction, all schools will remain open, utilizing current space to avoid rental costs for portable classrooms for all students. Phase 1 of construction includes building the new classrooms at the back of the property. Students remain in their current classrooms and school configuration at this time. Once the classroom portion is complete, the students would occupy those spaces and construction would begin on the front portion of the building. 2 school years will see the full construction. Feel like I wrapped that one up quickly. We're going to move on to costs. Placing a dollar amount on the ballot for voters requires the formation of a cost estimate that becomes the legal high water mark for district borrowing and spending on the project. The cost of the project is $54,250,179. This cost includes all design work, system upgrades, renovations, additions, and site work. As a result of the necessary high water mark, when deciding what amount to put forward to voters, the board has chosen to be conservative in selecting a number that includes contingencies for unknown costs that may arise. The cost estimates include several layers of contingencies that are appropriate for this phase of planning. When the Amherst School Board first brought the project to the 2021 bond hearing, there were estimates from LaValle Brenzinger. The estimate carried a higher price tag than the board chose not to bring it forward to the ballot. Through a request for proposal process for the architect of record, Banwell Associates was hired. With feedback from the community, further assessing the program and going back to the drawing board, Banwell presented 2 designs, both for a 2-story elementary school building at a lower cost. The design you've seen was selected by JPAC and ASB to reuse the multipurpose room and avoid building on the Upper Wilkins Field site. While further confirming the programming needs and analyzing costs, including construction escalation, the 23 warrant article is seen on the screen. This is a guaranteed maximum price as a standard when working with a construction manager. As has been presented tonight, since 2017, there has been an eye on the facility needs of the district. The problems are not going away. Systems continue to age past their anticipated life. Space constraints continue to impact education, with enrollment projections remaining steady. Construction escalation and rising interest rates are the primary cost drivers. Using a 4% construction escalation, the same project could cost $12 million more in just 5 years and $27 million more in 10 years. This is without any bond rate fluctuations impacting financing. Applying for state building aid was deemed a priority by the Amherst School District, both the board and administration. The board is advocating for an increase in building aid with local legislative representatives later this week. Building projects were ranked on various criteria, including safety and security, obsolete or inefficient conditions, overcrowding and increased enrollment, operational cost efficiency, maintenance program, and the district's eligibility for free and reduced lunch. The Amherst project was ranked 7 out of 17. This ranking from an outside source demonstrates significant need, considering our district did not receive any of the 200 points available based on eligibility for free and reduced lunch. Final awards will be based on ranking, state appropriation, and voter approval. Funding is possible, but not highly likely. The role of construction manager is important in this process for both the district as well as the taxpayers. For the district, this firm coordinates all aspects of construction, ensures site safety, and delivers a final guide to the building for future use of systems and maintenance. For the taxpayer and the district, this firm ensures a guaranteed maximum price for construction. The construction manager is required to build to the budget and provides guidance to the design team and owner on how to best achieve a cost-competitive facility with the monies that are available. Before demolition or construction starts, all costs are fully defined and understood by all parties. The dollar amount on the ballot is the high water mark. The board knows that the community would not support us coming back for more funding. In 2021, the request for proposal qualification was completed for the architect and construction manager. Since then, we have worked closely with DEW Construction to ensure the project can be completed for the cost that is being presented. Our Director of Facilities, Roger Preston, has worked with DEW to ensure a 5% contingency is included in the cost to account for increases from 2022 to 2023. DEW reported on the construction market at our January Amherst School Board meeting, citing that CBRE's new construction cost index forecasts a 14.1% year-over-year increase in construction costs by year-end 2022 as labor and material costs continue to rise. Escalation should stabilize in the 2 to 4% range in 23 and 24, on par with historical averages. And the CPI for 23 is expected in the 3 to 4% range. Should the project pass, the construction manager bids the project to subcontractors, agrees to the guaranteed maximum price, and is bound to that cost. The construction schedule, pre-construction schedule, and material lead times are understood in advance with schedule contingencies. This is how all projects are managed, and DEW will not start until they know the critical path items are in hand. The SAU administration has engaged with the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank to assist with financing. The bond bank pools smaller bonds to reduce cost, increase efficiencies, and has a proven track record of supporting New Hampshire school districts. By working with this bond bank, the taxpayers are granted a level of oversight that remains steady despite the inevitable change in board members or administrators. The bond bank will review our investments and refinance if appropriate throughout the life of the loan. The current proposal is level debt with a current interest rate of 5.75%. It's good to know how the building aid impacts our bond process. The bond bank application requires submission date of June 19th, which is prior to the state budget finalization. Should the article pass, the district would obtain a bond anticipation note to start the project design before the state budget has been finalized. These tables show the details of the cost of the bond. For an average home of $482,000, which is the amount determined by the town, the cost would begin at 57 cents per thousand and then hold steady at $839 for the life of the loan. Slight fluctuations at the end. This is based on the 5.75 interest rate provided by the bond bank for conservative budgeting purposes. The board's original presentation at the bond hearing and public hearing in January structured bond repayment over a 30-year period. Since that presentation, we have shifted focus to a 25-year period, resulting in a lower projected interest rate with an estimated savings of $14 million over the life of the loan. The board is currently focused on level debt repayment, ensuring the yearly impact is the same for current taxpayers as well as those living in the district in the future. These decisions have been made with our best intentions based on current information, and subtleties could change in order to save the taxpayer money when the final bond rates are set. To summarize this presentation, the Amherst School Board has supported this warrant article 5-0. We have had numerous discussions and debates on the finer points, as well as the overarching reasons behind coming to the community with such a project. None of us have taken lightly the task to provide the town and taxpayers with a strategic long-term investment while creating an optimal environment for educating students across the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Wayne and Means report.
And by Greg Fritz.
All right, thank you. The Amherst School Board Ways and Means does not support this article by a vote of 1 to 6. Committee members unanimously agreed that space issues exist at Clark Wilkins, which should be addressed. However, most do not believe that a strong case has been made for the town to spend $104 million, $54 million plus interest to solve them. We also feel that the Amherst School Board hasn't provided detailed cost benefit analyses and alternative plans. Yes, there was consideration, but they're not costed analyses. Those could also address the space needs and costs more efficiently. For example, we discussed one option where you could retain Clark at a wing onto Wilkins, provide the space that is lacking, and to upgrade all the systems to accommodate larger space. Another option that wasn't costed thoroughly is using the space that already exists at the Sohegan Cooperative Annex building and redistribute grade levels in a different configuration to relieve space issues generally. Because it's not possible to conclude that the current proposed plan is the best available option, Ways and Means believes that the board has more homework to do prior to asking for an informed vote. It seems design plans haven't accounted for special services growth or volatility. Alternatively, enrollment growth may have been overestimated for the general student population, which could be leading to a building that is larger and more expensive than it need be. Thus, more work needs to be done to present the alternative choices and general related costs to the community as is typically done in these matters. An alternate view of this article is that the underfunding of maintenance needs for an aging building with critical systems that are end of life have forced Amherst residents to consider radical action. The current proposal is the only one that has been vetted and can be acted upon in the shortest amount of time. While the project is not likely to receive the state aid to offset the cost of the article, the Amherst School District maintains a relatively favorable ranking of 7 out of 17 on the New Hampshire Department of Education priority list of schools should funds become available. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so let's open this up to public discussion. So as I said, there are 2 microphones in front. To your right, let's make that the pro microphone, and to your left, let's make that the con microphone. If you could line up as you wish to speak. Would anyone like to move to the microphones?
Okay, so now speaking as a private person, this on? You got me? Hello, hello, hello. Yeah. Okay. All right. Greg Fritz, Amherst. So we heard that alternatives were considered, but unfortunately they're not costed. And we have detailed, really nice cost per square foot breakdowns for the proposed plan, but nothing, and that's from LBA, the first architect, but nothing for any of the alternatives. It's really impossible to make a financial decision about what is the most effective way to proceed. We heard the presentation tonight, we heard that they cite, we want to hear evidence-based decisions. We hear that, but we don't see any sources. We like to cite your sources. For example, we saw tonight that HVAC is supposed to improving that was how absences. I want to see some idea how that is. What cite your sources? How does HVAC going to affect absences for full day attendance? I'm not saying it does or doesn't. I just would like to know if you're going to cite your sources. It would be nice to see these things while we're building these schools. We talked about special needs a bunch. You don't have projections for that. We don't know what we're building. We want to build the right school this time. We don't be back here in 5 years building a bigger school or having to find a way to have empty space. I'd like you to open a mechanism to donate funds. We heard about the success of donating funds in the Clark example. We have other examples around town. This will help drive the cost to people who are cost sensitive. And I think it would increase the probability of passing this in the future. So I encourage you to open an avenue to donate funds to this project, because it does need to be, there's a lot of work to be done, needs to be done. We heard the capital reserve fund.
Great.
That's it.
You have 30 more seconds.
Okay. Capital reserve fund is going to help AMS. That's great. But last year you needed a bond to do it. It's nice that you now are using the capital reserve funds to do it after passing the warrant last year. I saw on your map tonight, you had outdoor classrooms. What are those? How does Medicare to portables? Are those going to have you complained about portables having all these features with safety and other issues. Do your outdoor classrooms have those features? That wasn't clear. And we hear about no one got what they wanted. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what you didn't get? So we understand there was a compromise in fact. Thanks.
Thank you.
There's a lot there, Greg. You went through too much of it too quickly, so I'll try to remember as much of it as I can. Say that again. No, that's fair. It's fair. And I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Victoria.
I can jump in here. So first of all, outdoor classrooms are something that is at actually all of our schools, where our teachers take our students out into the yard to do a variety of things. We've seen leaf rubbings, we've seen a variety of projects, art, just fresh air, and a brain break and a change of location. In terms of seeking out donations, that is something that has been discussed throughout the last 4 years. We've discussed donations for smaller projects, smaller portions of the project, such as a playground fund or a beautification of the outside of the site, things like that. Not necessarily for the entire building, as it's the public school building for the town. When you mentioned AMS, after the bond failed last year, we had discussions with many people in the community, and we understood that we needed to change something that we were doing. And the only piece that we could change was taking AMS and doing the changes at AMS over time, rather than all in one swoop, which at the time would have made more sense with interest rates, as well as the construction efficiencies that we could realize between doing both buildings. So we've done those two things. When you talk about special needs enrollment expectations, this is a really tricky one. We've talked at our school board meetings, and I believe our superintendent told us that, it's really not a number that is readily projected in the education world. Instead, what we're projecting in this building are flexible classrooms. Those flexible classrooms don't necessarily have to be for another section of third grade. It could be for a special needs service that is required based on population and based on enrollment. So that's how we've planned for that fluctuation.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, you mentioned the detailed costing, Greg. You are correct. We don't have the detailed costing that you see in the plan that Banwell put together and the proposed plan there. Two reasons for that. Number one, you did mention LaValle Brenzinger. They did not give us that detailed costing. They gave us a different set, and then Banwell and DEW provided the costing of the project we're looking at. LaValle Brenzinger, if you remember, was about 66 million for that project and 98 million overall with the middle school. So when we went with Banwell and DEW, we got those estimates upgraded and a lot further refined. But this all goes back to 2019 or 2020. Our first attempt at this was putting a simple $250,000 A&E warrant article on the ballot, and that failed. So we had to go through with $150,000, adding it to the budget. So this, to say that we should have gone back to the taxpayers for more money to do more detailed costing, I don't think it was realistic. I don't know that that was an item that we were going to necessarily be able to do when it was voted down that first time. And we knew that we have long-term building things coming up. So it's still something that we needed to get done. That's why we try to do it as economically as possible. And I think Matt and Brad from DEW and Banwell here tonight will tell you that if they were running a tab for everything they've done for us beyond that 150 and what little bit of the 150 that we had allocated to them, it's substantially adds up to more than even that original 250 we were looking for. So we appreciate them coming down tonight. And the last thing that I'll mention is the CRF. Yes, we have that now to do work on the middle school, but it's because of the shift in focus, as Victoria mentioned. We said all along last year that we still wanted to contribute to this fund because if a project fails and we only get half of us, one half of the project, like an elementary school, we have that CRF to do maintenance on the other building. But if it were to pass and we had done both schools in one shot, we still have that money to be able to save up and do the expenses that have been noted in your report that were neglected for so long. So we have $1 million in the bank or $1.5 million to replace critical things in an emergency. So it's another way to fund it. But the CRF has been something that we've been honest about the last 3 to 4 years, that we're going to use that money in some facility maintenance capacity, whether it's a renovation or whether it's an emergency that comes up.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Ken Miller. I live on the corner of Old Coach Lane and Jones Road. My wife and I have lived there for 42 years. This is going to be the biggest traffic mess possible. You got 43 houses going to be built up New Boston and Boston Post Road toward Mount Vernon. Mr. Killian lives up in that general area. All of this is going to converge right down in the area where we live. It's already a mess. If you don't believe it, come there between 8:30 and 9:30 any morning or 2 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It is terrible. And I don't see anything in your presentation that talks about how you're going to handle that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, I can speak to that one. I'm just looking for the slide. If it's possible for us to pull up slide number 43. This is the elementary.
Keep going.
Yep, that one. There we go.
That one?
Yep, that one. Oh, sorry. Yep, I'll pull it closer. Thank you. This is the elementary school site plan. This was developed with the civil engineering firm of Ty and Bond. And what you'll notice on this site plan is that around the building, there's a loop, and that loop is a car loop. It's for cars and buses, and it accommodates 75 cars. So what we've done in our preliminary work is stand outside Wilkins during drop-off time with a clicker and click how many cars have come through. And then we gave that information over to Ty and Bond and discussed it with Banwell to discuss how we need to get the cars off of the road. We know that that area, that Boston Post Road traffic in that Jones Corner is a problem. The town has discussed it. They've done traffic studies regarding that. And it is something that we are aware of. Without site work being done to Wilkins, that does not get improved. With the site work being done to Wilkins, we can help that situation by getting those 75 cars queued up off of the road.
Hold on a second, Ken.
And with
Okay.
that, just one
I'd
comment.
like to add one thing to that. If
All right,
you
sir.
drive over in a Wilkins school area any day and go out and count the number of cars that are in that parking lot now, you're going to find it's around 70 to 80 cars right now. Now you close Clark School and put all those people over there. What are you going to do for parking? This is not going to do it. And if you think you're going to get up that hill, up to Upper Wilkins Field, you got another thought.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so wait for me to call on you first, okay? Thank you. Next comment, please. Thank you.
Jeff Gandito, 36 Buckridge. My one concern with this, well, first, thanks for all the work that was done on this project. It's an enormous amount of work. Last year I supported this project. This year I don't. And it's a big reason is because of the level debt funding. Can you explain that to people? Because there's two choices here. There's a level principal and a level debt. The level debt, and my numbers may be a little off, but I think it's going to cost people an extra $10 million or so to get nothing, in return for that. So could you just explain why the board chose to go with level debt versus level principal? Thanks.
Yeah, Jeff, I think it's more along the lines of it's an investment for the community. If you're a taxpayer here and you live here now, we were to do the level principal, you're paying the bulk of that up front. You're paying a lot more interest up front. Your payments are higher, and then they do waterfall over time. So if you move in 5 or 10 years, your payments are considerably lower than the people that have lived here the whole time. By leveling this out, yes, it costs more money. That's why we looked at the 25-year option instead to bring it down to about 14 million. And we certainly don't know what the bond rates are going to be, but this is going to be an investment where, yeah, your rate doesn't go down. So it's a little more stable if you're in town now, for better or worse. But if you move into town in 5 years or 10 years, you're still investing in that same, your chunk of the school is still the same as it was for somebody that lived here since the beginning of that project.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Thompson. I wanted to just provide some maybe commentary versus a question. So I'd like to provide some more real world examples of what happened in the town I lived in before moving to Amherst. The schools in my previous town were also in need of substantial repairs and improvements. People also moved to that town for its excellent education. However, voters repeatedly denied repairs and improvements to these buildings and voted down school budgets. In 2018, one of the town's elementary schools flooded due to a faucet in disrepair. The flood caused extensive damage to grades K through 12. Those classrooms were displaced for 3 months. They were split up between 2 other schools in town while repairs took place. In 2021, the ceiling collapsed in another of the elementary schools. Thankfully, it happened when no one was in the building, but it displaced all 500 students. The students spent the remainder of the year split up in various other schools in town. Some were bused to use space in a vacant private school the next town over.
Ma'am, you have 30 seconds.
All of this cost for relocating the students, leasing out space in the private school was an add-on to the cost for the extensive damage to the school building. I encourage everyone to view the JPAC website and FAQs specifically. As a newer resident, this helped answer many of my questions. Hopefully, my experience in my previous town provides some perspective from another town that despite the screaming need for action, inaction proved to be more expensive in time, money, and impact to students. Voting to inappropriately fund our schools cannot continue to be the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Hi, Kelly Schmidt. We're supposed to say our town or resident or anything? I can't remember, or just our name. Are we supposed to say our?
Yeah, the full name and your residence, please.
So Kelly Schmidt, 11 Patricia Lane, Amherst. I'm going to read something that comes out of the New Hampshire DOE's building project support. There's something in the PDF that comes about all the schools that says that are on that list. It says this project will replace 2 old outdated schools that have a multitude of deficiencies with a new combined elementary school. It was studied that a new school would be less expensive, would be a less expensive option and save the school district in yearly costs for operation and maintenance. Now, it does sound like our schools, but guess what? That's Derry, not us. They're asking for a $74 million school. Okay. They're not the only ones on the list who are doing the exact same things for varying costs from, 33 million to others. And so I would urge everyone who's trying to compare our schools to other schools, keep these comparisons in mind. We have more than, things in common with other schools than just our test scores and community makeup. We have building issues that everyone is fighting as well. So we're not alone in that we're going to have these big tax expenditures one way or the other. And the other thing I'd like to say is that many of the families who have been advocating for these school changes for years and put many, efforts into it, not as school board members, as just volunteers on committees and things like that. Most of them will not have children in these 2 buildings. They're not having a single benefit from it. If you think about the age of the children who will get to go into these schools in 2026, my 2nd grader will not be in it. My kindergartner will get 1 year. I'm still willing to put all that money into it for the rest of my time in this community, because that's how much it impacts all of the children and staff in those buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Marilyn Gibson, Mack Hill Road.
Marilyn, could you speak up a little bit, please?
Sure, I'll give it a good try. I do commend everybody that was involved in this attempt to get a new school, but I also like the fact that there is almost like 2 parts to this. One is the new elementary school. The other one is repairs to Amherst Middle School. I can attest to the fact that my children went through these schools and succeeded. Their education was good for them. However, I think it's not a new building that will increase scores nor change curriculum for the benefit. Actually, I had a conversation, a meeting with our superintendent, Mr. Chamberlain, not more than 2 weeks ago, and he did say that a new building does not increase scores. I also realized that the teachers have done a very commendable job with what they have. And I don't see a lackluster in education by scores at this point in time because of an issue called, quote unquote, COVID-19. But what I do see is another factor, which is the teachers themselves. Yes, we have it, administration itself. So I don't think we need a new building. But I do think we need repairs to end of life factors. And as a homeowner, we projected that we would have facilities in our home that would require some timing and a budget. And I think I can also at this point in time say that previous administrators, previous board members were not being responsible in their duties. And I am looking forward to our upcoming elections in order to change all of that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that, Nate?
Go ahead.
Okay. First, I'm just going to ask Superintendent Chamberlain if you'd like to respond first, and then I have a follow-up.
Sure, be happy to. There is a video out there that talks about the impact of a building on education. And what I try to communicate is that every day, and I've lived this experience as a principal, Clark Wilkins is a barrier to Kathleen and her staff. And what happens when you remove that barrier, there's more time to be in classrooms, there's more collaboration, there's more program that's available that in fact does increase the educational experience. So building to building doesn't necessarily increase educational experience, but a new building would provide more efficiencies and more opportunities for Kathleen and the administration to be educational leaders. And just we are one very close addition next year to moving two significant programs to be on a cart, which fundamentally would change the educational experience for our kids. So yes, the building will in fact increase efficiencies and provide more time for educational leadership and ensure program has the space and dignity for all our kids. So please understand that was more of a nuanced answer than simply just bricks and mortar. Bricks and mortar allows us to do other things. So thank you.
Victoria. Good.
Steve, if you can go to slide 176, that'd be helpful.
Really, context there. I don't have numbers.
Well, while they're figuring that out, I'll read this, which I think talks to Interim Superintendent Chamberlain's point. So this is from Teaching 2030. And this is about the importance of collaboration and the impact on student learning. And part of the new building would have more collaborative spaces. It says collaboration among us is a must. A large-scale research study reported in 2009 concluded what we have always known. Teachers learn most from each other. The researchers, using 11 years of matched teacher and student achievement data, found that peer learning among small groups of experienced and qualified teachers seemed to be the most powerful predictor of student achievement over time. So in that respect, I do think that we would see with the new building, we would see different outcomes.
You take a look up on the screen. This is option one that was presented by LaValle Brenzinger back in 2020. This is the cost for just updating the systems and then using portables to augment our space needs. So if you look down at the bottom there, the total for this is 33 million. If we go to the next slide. When we talk about a construction escalation cost, if you add in the construction escalation cost, you come to over 60 million. This is over a 20-year lifetime if you were to do all of those changes. And then the next slide. The slide before that.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. How this impacts finances, it impacts us with an unpredictable tax rate spikes. What happens if the needs are included in the budget and the budget doesn't pass? Does that put our education operating budget needs at risk? We would still have multiple buildings to maintain, and the inflation of project costs and the interest rates would still rise.
Good. Thank you. Ma'am, I think you were next.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Town. I am at 48 Thornton Ferry Road 2. I'm a resident. I'm a parent of a 6th and 7th grader AMS, and I am also the school counselor at Wilkins. You saw my office up there that I share with our two wonderful social workers. It's hard. I'm not going to lie. Our students are flexible and resilient, and they are absolutely wonderful. I moved here 10 years ago to have an education for my own 2 kids. And 2 years ago, I got the opportunity to work and live in the same town. It's amazing. I love this town. I'm a geek. I'm a self-proclaimed Amherst geek. I will say, I love where I live. What I'm thankful for that. What I would be more thankful for is for the town to support our educators and our students in this town. I have done counseling sessions in the cafeteria, on stage, outside, in our hallways. That's not conducive to student learning and student engagement and student confidentiality. Our kids deserve better than that. My 6th and 7th grader have been at the root of some of the construction issues, the things that have been kind of fixed here and there at AMS. My 6th grader had to double up for 2 weeks during the flood with his wonderful 2 teachers sitting up there. They did it and they rocked it. My 7th grader has had indoor recess in the gym and the cafeteria with leaking roofs. Mom, why is this happening? I don't know, buddy. Trying to explain the democratic system to him is hard, and he knows it a lot. But coming here tonight, I had explained to him more that I'm crossing my fingers that this town is going to stand behind their students. And I implore you tonight, whether you've had students in the past, whether your students are 30 years old and they've been through these schools, support them. You wanted your kids, you moved here for the school system, most likely. You wanted your kids to be supported too. Support ours, please.
Thank you. Sure. 1 second.
Hi, I'm Jason Hennessy from Boston Post Road. First, I wanted to say thank you to the JPAC. It's clear that you guys put a lot of work into all your efforts. The thing I was wondering about is I was looking at the State Department of Education website, specifically the enrollment details. And from what I can tell, from 06 to 07 till the last year that's in there for enrollment, we're actually down about 300 students. I looked up it was mentioned that the IDEA might have affected that, but that was passed in 1990. So I would assume that didn't really affect these enrollment numbers. So my question is, if we're down about 300 students, have we done a full analysis of why we're running out of space with less students than we had, 15 years ago? Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm not sure which slide number this is that we went over. And I'm not entirely sure that a graph that would show the numbers that you're talking about is actually included in this deck, though it is part of our complete NESDEC enrollment report, which is available at that jfac.sau39.org site. In terms of the use of the school and how it has been different, when we talk about a declining enrollment, there has been a declining enrollment since that, I think you mentioned 06, 08, around that time, there has been. And that's district wide, that's town wide. So when we talk pre-K through 12, but when we're talking about our elementary school, our kindergarten through 4, we've seen 100 new students in the last 4 years. That's a lot of students. I don't know if there's anything else, Mr. Chamberlain, if you'd like to chime in on.
Just the part of the space crunch is try to eliminate end of life portables. So that's impacting the space, as well as since that the dates that you talk about, things have changed, including we've expanded our kindergarten program as well as moved special programming in-house. So the pressures on the space are to multiple reasons, but lately it has been, for example, we had an increase of an entire first grade over the last summer. So it is trying to eliminate the portables. It is programmatic changes, increasing our kindergarten time, as well as in applying least restrictive environments locally for our special education kids.
And then our class sizes, we've worked on getting those down to a more 16 to 20 range for, as we'll talk about in the budget part of this, but it's better for kids and better student teacher interaction with the smaller class sizes. And then additionally, Steve mentioned the portables that we have currently, but we did have quite a few more portables. I believe it was another 4 to 6 classrooms between Clark and Wilkins in that time as well. So bigger class sizes, less kindergarten kids, and more classrooms in the portable trailers have all factored into that as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Killian.
Micah Killian, 10 on Mount Vernon Road. It feels as though this is being positioned as leave things the way they are or remediate them by building a new school. And that's not how Ways and Means has looked at this. We went on tours of the buildings. Some of the space issues we think are deplorable. We think the leaks at AMS that have been known about since 2017 and persistent are deplorable. The question that we're raising is, are there other alternatives that would cost less than $40 million to put in place that would meet all the needs that people are so desperately trying to have met? Why do I say that? If this costs $54 million, and by the way, I want to give a shout out to Greg Fritz, who was the person who looked at all different financing alternatives. The original financing alternative brought forward by the board was 30 years at 6%. Greg found a way to sort of frame this at 5 3/4 for 25 years to bring the cost down to a little over $100 million. So it's not like we're simply against all of this. It's, have all the right options been presented?
Yeah, 30 seconds. Like,
Okay. At $54 million, if we got the $14 million of state aid, means it would be $40 million out of pocket. We've talked to the principals and others on our tours and whatnot, and it seems that it's quite possible to have other solutions that have not been costed out, admitted by Tom, that could be well under $40 million in costs. So please bear in mind, we're not against making changes. We absolutely believe the changes should happen. We're just not sure that we have enough sensible choices at different price ranges to move forward. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
I will say with that, again, we've not fully costed them the details that you see with I don't want to call them blueprints because they're not that, but drawings and renderings as close as we have to blueprints. But we have had experts give us estimates on this. We've had multiple experts from Valley Brenzinger and from DEW and Banwell. When you get into renovations, there's a lot of unknowns there too. So we have to move. We lose a lot of coding, not restrictions, grandfathering that we currently have now. So we start to muck around with Wilkins and we build a wing on the back and we start to replace all those mechanical systems. We have to move walls. We have load bearing walls. Who knows what the electrical looks like? We start getting into mold situations that we don't know about now that aren't having an impact. So the unknowns of a renovation are certainly a lot more potentially drastic than what we're going to face with the renovation, essentially the entire rebuild that we're doing now. So you're correct. If they absolutely could cost more, they could cost the same. They could cost less. We don't really know what those are going to be until we actually get in there and break into those walls and start to find that stuff out. So with the estimates that we've had in the sessions we've had in the years of planning that we've had with the experts there, we've gone through and our website has a ton of this information on it, different costs, different projects, different ways to look at this. And a lot of those costs do end up being pretty similar to what we're putting up there now, but it's less disruption with what we're doing now. It's a shorter time frame and it's a lot more knowns than what we would see otherwise.
Okay. Mr. Hussaini, I think you were next.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Muzi Hussaini, 33 Eagle Rock. I think Micah Killian already took the words out of my tongue, but I want to make a couple of points. I moved here in 2005, allured by the reputation of our school systems. And both my children, Sophia and Siraj, they had a fairly decent education, but since 2010, we have seen a degradation in school performance, learning experience, and also rising costs. For those of you who say that the citizens of Amherst are not willing to invest in their children and the school, is wrong. We've been very generous, and we have been supporting ever increasing operating costs and everything else. However, the results have been declining. The last good batch from our school system was 2017, and math, ELA scores and predictions are all on the downward slope. I do not believe any parent wants their children to be less prepared or inadequately prepared. So I wish it is not as binary as people are making it to be. I wish there was a middle portion here. I would like to see a new addition, new space. There is no debate that we are short of space. But like we have been saying, I do not believe we have looked at plausible alternatives and properly costed them out, period. We need space. We are willing to make an investment, but it has to be done properly. Otherwise, it would be penny wise, pound foolish. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
I'm Allison Beatty. I live on Joshua Road in Amherst. How many of you have been to a Clark Wiggins music show with Mr. Al Warden? I don't think anybody in this town would ever suggest that Mr. Al Warden is not a treasure that we have been able to hold on to for such a very long time. If we don't make space, Mr. Al Warden will move his music classes to a cart. Now, I luckily got to miss the recorder year because that was COVID for my third grader. I'm okay with that. But the all of the marimbas and the big, I don't even know what all those musical instruments are called, but percussion instruments would not be able to get brought to classrooms for kids to try and play and practice. We might have the next Dave Matthews here in Amherst, New Hampshire, but we wouldn't know because they wouldn't get to play those instruments. I also know that living here is a point of pride for everyone in this room, regardless of what you think about this warrant. And so if we don't do something to continue having people come here for that pride, we will have bigger issues. We will have a smaller tax base. We will have a bigger problem raising these funds if we don't do something sooner. I've listened to, another question for the whole room. Anybody have a printer in their bathroom? 80 of your fourth graders do. Yeah, that's where they have to go and they have to wait for someone. So their item is printed, but there might be someone in the restroom. Yeah. And so let's be honest, they're fourth graders. They're not great germ managers, right? They might be closing that toilet seat, but they might not be. Who knows, right? Not exciting. Not a place you want to keep your printer. The last thing I want to talk about quickly, and before Nate cuts me off.
You got 7 seconds.
7? Oh gosh. I work in outdoor education as a profession. I work for the Boy Scouts of America. The outdoor classroom spaces that are being proposed are the state of New Hampshire Board of Education is pushing towards more outdoor education without a real clear mandate. That's very New Hampshire-like. But getting us these classroom spaces would get us closer to what the state is looking for. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Terry Weiber.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I went to a Ways and Means Committee. And while I was at the Ways and Means Committee, they were talking about the cost to maintain the schools versus the cost to build the schools. And I think there was a slide that said 32 million to maintain versus 52 million, and kind of doing that dynamic. But the impression I got from the Ways and Means Committee was that these costs to maintain the schools were actually estimated by the same firms that were pitching for the cost of a new school. To me, that's like, you need your new roof, maybe windows done in your house, and you bring over a contractor that's known for building new housing saying, I don't know, those windows and that roof is going to be really expensive. What do you say we just knock down the whole house and rebuild it? So I could be wrong, but I'd like to know if, when they looked at the alternatives of maintaining the schools versus building new schools, whether they actually engaged some kind of third party that doesn't have, a boat in the race to actually truly go through and understand what the issues are, the timelines and the costs based on, let's say, competitive bidding, perhaps. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Sure. I'll go ahead and answer this one, or try to answer this one, I guess. So I'm not exactly sure what number was being discussed at that meeting or where exactly that number came from. So I'll give a little bit of history about the different numbers that we have seen. So to start, we had the 2017 capital needs assessment that was done by a company called Onsite Insight. From what I understand, and that is the work of Onsite Insight. Onsite Insight is not our construction manager, is not our architect. They are completely separate. So there's where our external piece began. At the next level, we were working with LaValle Brenzinger. They were working on a master planning study. At that point, there were 3 different projections that were given. Those projections were to replace the systems in the building, and augment with portables. The second was to do a complete renovation of Clark, of Wilkins, and add an addition. And the third was for a complete building, which would house pre-K through 5. Without knowing exactly where those numbers are, I can't really speak to it, but what I would like to stress here is that when you work with the construction management firms and the architects, the way that we have been meeting with these professionals every 2 weeks for a year plus now, you understand what their role is in the process. And their role in the process is not to upsell us. Their role is to understand that they're not going to get paid if this can't pass. If we don't pass this at the town, those firms will not see a penny. They're not trying to get more out of us than what we are able and willing to put into the project.
And in fairness to DEW, Matt, you can confirm, but we did not ask you and you did not provide costs for the projects that, you know, if we needed to replace an HVAC system, you did not provide that for us for the current buildings, correct? Okay, so all those numbers are from previous research that we've done with the on-site insight report, LaValle Brenzinger, and the master plan, and then certainly in-house knowledge we have with our facilities director as well. So just to make that clear that we did not get those estimates, the cat did not get in the hen house, or the fox did not get in the hen house, so to speak, while we were doing this.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am.
Ellen Grugin, Buckridge Drive in Amherst. So I have a couple of points. The first, I just want to speak to what Terry just said. I have spent time on the school board, on the Sauhegan Advisory Finance Council. I pay a great deal of attention to Ways and Means, and I was on JPAC. There's no conspiracy theory happening here. This group compared JPAC and then the school board has done incredible work. And again, they're volunteers and taxpayers. So I just want a quick data point. I own a preschool in town. I am not a data analyst, but my little school is a great testament to the growth that is happening in this town. So about 5 years ago, we had a considerable wait list. So we expanded. And 2 years later, we had a considerable wait list. So we expanded again. We expanded and now we have doubled and tripled our wait list. There are so many young families moving to town, and every single person that comes for a tour says, we moved here for the schools. And do you think we'll get in? I'm like, I don't know. There's 80 people on our wait list. So we're full for next fall. And we have about 40 kids on our wait list. So there are young people. I don't think we can measure that, right? People decide to leave for a variety of reasons. Their house is too big. They don't want to shovel anymore. It's hard to determine who's going to move into town, but I can tell you there are so many littles and they're coming in. I warned Adam Steele 2 years ago. I said, this is getting unbelievable. I mean, our phone is ringing off the hook. Other preschools, we just had a new preschool open 2 years ago. Other preschools are experiencing the same thing. I think it's a good data point. I'm not a data analyst. I do.
20 seconds. So.
Thank you. I know the 2 minutes is hard, Nate. Okay, that's fine.
We're an hour and a half in already.
I know.
So
The one thing I do want to quickly say, I hear a lot of bouncing back. It's a little bit of a tennis game. We didn't maintain the buildings. We didn't put the money we were supposed to put in. We shouldn't build a new building. We should provide some Band-Aid solutions again. I cannot support that anymore.
okay, thank you. Ma'am.
Elizabeth Guzma, Nathan Lord Road, Amherst. I just wanted to point out Ways and Means has alluded to the fact multiple times that there were no cost breakdowns for the alternatives that were out there. There was no understanding of the financials is what was said. That isn't actually true. We did get numbers of how much these other options would cost. The detailed breakdown that wasn't had was how much exactly to the dollar is the flooring estimate? How much is sheetrock going to cost? How much are we going to pay for the windows in this classroom? That's what they wanted the detailed breakdown for. That's unreasonable, right? There were multiple other options. A group of people decided on which one of those options was the most financially responsible, and the detailed breakdown was gotten on that. They've also said that the board and JPAC didn't do their homework on the other options. They've been looked at. so many times. All of the information and numbers for what has been looked at is available on the JPAC website. Just because people didn't want to do their homework and dive into the work doesn't mean that it hasn't been done and hasn't been happening for years.
Go ahead, sir.
Micah Killian, 10 Mount Vernon Road. We did not say that we wanted the same level of detail down to windows and moldings and all of that as was just pronounced. What I hear happening is we're hearing cost estimates from LaValle Brenzinger, who designed a very exorbitant building, wasn't rehired to continue, went to another architect to say, scale this sucker back. Okay, so why are we being presented with cost estimates for an overpriced architectural firm that even JPAC and the board decided not to continue with? It's a very legitimate question. We've been told it's on JPAC, it's on JPAC. We've been working on this since August. Okay, and we kept saying, you keep telling us all of this information that we need. It's more than the back of a napkin. It's not the completely detailed cost estimates for every line item. You're telling us it's on JPAC. None of us can find it. Rather than just sending us to JPAC, which is this vast repository of 3 or 4 or 5 years of data, just pull it out and give it to us. The long and short of it is there's nothing to pull out and give to us because there's no framing of what the costs of alternatives would be. So I just want to balance this out a little bit with, we're not asking for the ridiculous, but we're not simply willing to sign up for the sublime without knowing that there are a couple other options. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to give a little bit of light on that. At the time when LaValle Brenzinger was working with the Joint Facilities Advisory. I'm sorry, was that?
No, that was it. He's saying the wrong microphone, which allows.
Hey, hold on a second. Hold on a second. So first of all, Greg, could you sit down for a second? Oh, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Okay, so when the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee and the Amherst School Board and the administration were working with LaValle Brenzinger Architects, they brought forth 3 proposals. The first proposal was kick the can. That's what they termed it. So I apologize for the offensive nature of the name. Kick the can was to make repairs to the building and then augment our space with portables. That estimate was $23 million. The next estimate was to renovate and refurbish. That's renovate and refurbish Clark, Wilkins, and add an addition at Wilkins to accommodate the space in a proper building rather than portables. That estimate was $64.5 million. Their third estimate, option 3, was to build new. We all understand what build new is. It's pre-K through 5 on the Wilkins site. That estimate was $66 million. When you are presented with 3 options, one is 23 million, one is 64, and one is 66. It would make sense to look at 64 and 66 and say those are very close together, especially when we're going to be sharing the cost amongst the community. So when you look at those 2 options, JPAC, the Amherst School Board, administration weighed in on what the positive would be to do the middle versus to do $2 million, less than $2 million more to build new. In that moment, more detailed costs were provided for the kick the can, which is $23 million. And then more detailed costs were provided for build new, because those detailed costs were at both ends of the extremes. Rather than asking for detailed costs and spending taxpayer money to receive detailed costs on something that was less than $2 million different. So what we have are the kick the can detailed estimates, and then we have build new detailed estimates. What we know about the LaValle Brenzinger work is that the programming was larger than the programming that we have refined with Banwell. Since we have joined with Banwell, we have, as an administration and a school board, we have sat down and we have said, what do we absolutely need? When you know what you need, you're able to cut a little bit of space. LaValle Brenzinger was presenting us with classrooms with 9 classrooms per grade level. This plan is presenting us with 7 classrooms per grade level. When you need less space, it will cost less money. What we know is that the renovate and refurbish number was given to us in terms of how to renovate the building. So you can assume that the kick the can cost is what goes into that. And then the addition would be the cost to build a smaller addition. That smaller addition number was not drawn out of thin air. It was figured out by what the current cost of building a small construction for a school would be. That's where that number has come from. And that is why we have detailed estimates on both ends and not detailed estimates in the middle. Further, once we joined with Banwell Architects, we decided to continue, we as in JPAC, the school board, decided to continue to the build new option. When you have one direction that you're going, you continue in that direction. Working with Banwell, they provided us with 2 separate design options. One was to use Upper Wilkins Field, and one was the option that you've seen today. We have detailed costs of those 2 options. We chose the option that you've seen today. Thank you.
Okay. So folks, we're now an hour and 40 minutes into this deliberative session. Is there anything new to add to this current discussion?
Yeah. Who's Kelly?
Okay, hold on a second. Ma'am, you haven't gone first. You haven't gone before, so.
Sorry, excuse me while I take off the mask so I can be heard.
Yep.
Without taking my hearing aids out. My name is Barbara Williams and I live on Foundry Street, right across from the Clark School. The domino impact of Warrant 12 definitely includes the cessation of Clark as a school. Yet the $54 million doesn't include any costs relative to the future of Clark. Let's look at not retaining Clark as a school building. I attended a session by Zoom that was an informative session run by the Clark School Exploration Subcommittee back in the spring of 21. At that time, we were told that there were 5 options that were being considered. The school board would either sell Clark property to an owner, a new owner, and it would be developed either for residential purposes or for commercial purposes. Or the school board would sell it to the town or a related foundation for some community purpose. And there were 3 ideas floated. One was for a children's library, one was for a senior center, and one was for a community center. So those were the 5 different options. And the Clark building would either be raised and a green space would be developed, or it would be raised and a completely new building would be put in for a community purpose, or it would be partially raised and retrofitted, and maybe there would be an addition again for some community purpose, which I've articulated.
You have 20 seconds, ma'am.
If the town buys Clark, then we're going to lose income that could be generated by selling to a private party. And I'm sorry, I got rattled by the notification. What I'm saying is that I really don't think this is the first step. Article 12 is the first step in a whole series of things that is going to come before this community as a financial challenge. Everybody wants the best for these children. There's no question about that. But what is it going to cost all told? And I do think that the school board and the town owes this community, its residents, its voters, its taxpayers, more solid information on that. I asked that question at an information session that I attended, and I floated $10 to $20 million. And one school board member responded and said, "Oh, no, it won't be $20 million.
Thank you. Thank you.
But we know it's going to be a significant number."
Thank you.
Just some further clarification on that quickly. The conversation points that Barbara mentions, I don't want to say that they are plans and options that we've discussed. There are a million options that we could potentially discuss. Those were ideas that came up during the community sessions we had with a variety of folks that are interested in a project like this, especially folks that live in the village. As she mentioned, in the spring of 2021, primarily on Zoom. So no decisions by any means have been made. I think Brian Coogan and I, who were at the meeting with Barbara last week, we both admitted right off the top that yes, if the interests of the town are at stake financially, then selling that building in a heartbeat is the best way to go. But we realize that that is not necessarily the most popular option, especially for people that live around that village. So just to clarify, there have not been any decisions made. We will be engaging the community if Article 12 passes, and this will be a very collaborative project, knowing that any costs from not selling that building will come back to taxpayers in one way or another, be it through taxes and maintenance for a senior center, taxes and maintenance for a park, whatever you might want to put there. And we're not naive to that fact, but just know that we have not made any decisions and there are not concrete plans. That will be phase 2 of this project, because Clark will still be needed for a school for at least 3 years as we do construction on the new Wilkins.
Okay.
Hey, Lisa Eastland, 19 River Road, Amherst. And the moderator, this might be a question for you. It might be a question for I don't know who it's for. Can an amendment or a warrant be added that asks for, let's say again, the $250,000 for A&E costs? Is it too late to add something like that? When would to the ballot? And if it is too late, when would that have been the opportunity?
So I defer to counsel on this, but I believe that's, ma'am.
It is too late to add to the warrant at this point. It needed to be, the warrant itself has to be posted by I think it was the 30th of Monday immediately prior to today.
But can that amount be added to the budget, or that would have to be a separate warrant article?
The budget itself can be discussed and amended.
So that could go into an amendment.
But an article cannot be added.
Okay, I got it. So I guess the question then is between the board and the Ways and Means is if that was a sticking point that we need more information and more A&E, why was that not presented along with this to give people a choice? So that maybe if the problem is we don't have enough information, then why wasn't that put forth as an option to get more information?
I think, Lisa, and I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but this Ways and Means group was the first that really brought this up to the extent that they have over the last few months. We've been talking about this for upwards of 4.5 years now. And so I think that it's just at this point, as a board, we were beyond that again, but certainly that goes into a potential plan C, which I'd like to quickly highlight very, very quickly. Somebody asked us at that meeting that Barbara referenced last week, which we do have other meetings coming up as well. You can find them on the SAU website. If there are more intimate questions that you wanted to ask in a setting less intimidating than this. But as we look at what that plan C is, if depending on the outcome of Article 12 this year, obviously, besides going back and looking at what our next steps are for a grander facility scheme, the immediate things, looking at increased special needs. If we get more increase, we look at out of district placement, tuition, transportation, which adds hundreds of thousands onto the budget, or we increase class sizes to be able to accommodate, less space and accommodate growing populations. You get to go trailer shopping, which is always fun on a Saturday in Alabama. We get to look for more portables, not only to replace the ones that we have that are near end of life, but to get additional ones that we can add back into the mix at both AMS and Wilkins. We get to look at future bonds anyway. We're looking at tens of millions in future projects within the next 5 to 10 years. So we're going to be bonding something regardless, no matter what happens with some of the big projects that we have coming up. With all the renovations that we will have in these buildings, we're looking at funding them one of 3 ways. It's larger capital reserve fund deposits, meaning none of our unassigned fund balance goes back to the taxpayers. We just keep that and save it and then slow down these projects. We have huge budget increases. For example, the facility project we're looking at now for the roofs, that'd be another 1.6 million, which would make this year's budget 4% to 9%. I'm sure that'll be palatable for the next Ways and Means groups as these guys looked at this budget, or we bond stuff. So there are only 3 ways to pay for things. And those are some of the options that we have. If this one doesn't pass, and not to be, overly dramatic and dire with that, but those are conversations that as a board we've started to have and will continue to have.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am.
Hi, Carrie Glines, 17 Holly Hill. My maiden name is Bradbury. I was born in 1978 and brought home to a house right in the village, 9 Church Street, Amherst, New Hampshire, where my dad still resides. I attended kindergarten at the Brick School, now the SAU building. I attended first grade readiness and first grade at the Clark School. I attended 2nd through 4th grade at the Wilkins School. I attended 5th through 8th grade at Amherst Middle School, and I attended 9th through 12th grade at Souhegan High School. The elementary schools look no different than they did when I was in attendance that many years ago. I am immensely proud of the education I received in Amherst, enough so that my husband and I expended all we had to be here to give the same and provide the same for our 3 children, currently in 2nd, 4th, and 6th grade, none of whom would benefit from what's being presented today. We support it regardless. I have spent my entire career in education, 18 years in higher education, and a combined 6 years in the K through 12 public system. The success of our students relies on much more than exceptional test scores. Students require.
All right, so is this germane to the discussion of the bond, or do you want to talk about this in the budget discussion?
What's that?
Are you talking about test scores? We're talking about the bond for the.
Yep, I've got my point. Yep.
Right.
Students require exceptional educators to support their learning potential. That we have, no doubt. They also require space and air and room to maximize that learning potential. That we do not have. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Chelsea. I live on Buckridge Drive, and I've worked in facilities maintenance.
I'm sorry, could you provide your last name?
Oh, Chelsea Borden, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And I live on Buckridge Drive. I have worked in facilities maintenance as well as public safety, and looking at those pictures is terrifying. I've been sitting in my chair shaking because I have kids who I'm not sure, I haven't done the math yet, if they would be able to benefit from this. I think they might just be a little too old. But if hearing about a portable building catching on fire, I'm from Cleveland and our river caught on fire twice, and you do not want to be remembered for things like that. And we came to Amherst because we heard of the great school system. We didn't totally look into everything. I didn't know about pictures of portables. I didn't know what type of school I'd be sending them to. I just knew that it was a good school system, a good community. We wanted to be here. So we're here, and looking at those pictures is really, really scary. And I think the Ways and Means Committee have brought up what other options could we have looked at? Have we looked at all these other options? And I just don't understand how they haven't seen the same presentation that I'm seeing of all of the other options that have been shown and the cost that's been shown. And I just don't see how we're seeing different projections here. Putting all of the students together in the same building makes sense to me. I'm not really sure how to even think about dropping off one kid at one building, driving to another building. That would create a lot more traffic, I would think. And it just makes sense to me. And I think you guys have done a really good job of, it looks like from 2017, you've been doing this work. And I think at least no one's openly acknowledged the work that you guys have been doing for us. And I appreciate that as a relatively new resident. So
thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. My name is Deb Q, and I live at 16 Summerfield Way. I think I'm going to be representing the over 65 crowd. And first of all, I want to say we want our kids to have a good education. I came from a very progressive high school in Massachusetts. Just because it's progressive doesn't mean it's good, however. They did not always give the 3 writing and reading and so forth. But let's get down to business here on the warrant. I find that in the spirit of transparency, your 0.57 cents does not adequately address what the whole bond dollar amount is. You say what the bond is, but you do not really clearly say to the taxpayer, especially the older group, what the liability is going to be. And that to me is just misrepresentation. I would like to see the dollar amount for the other years. You say it's flat, well, then just put years 2 through 3, 1, blah, blah, blah. They really need to know what the bang for the buck is going to be. And then I just want to mention one thing about the COVID. I think that's a moot. I don't buy it. All the schools.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't understand what that has to do with this bond issue.
They said that the COVID had affected the scores. And I'm saying.
Well, okay, ma'am. So let's talk about the facilities bond issue.
Okay, well, we'll get to that one later then, I guess.
I guess so.
So
thank you.
I just hope that past performance is not going to be an indicator of future performance, i.e. maintenance. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Shannon Gascoigne, 5 Parker Farm Lane. So just, I'm going to try to hit on a few things that I've heard tonight. First, 06, 07 enrollments. Yes, it's a fact. If you go to the DOE website, those enrollments were higher than what we see today. What you don't see on the DOE website, as Mr. Gauthier mentioned earlier, we had multiple portables commissioned throughout the district, more than we do now. I think it was 8, but I don't have my notes with me tonight. Additionally, we did not have the in-house special ed programming that we do now. So we were sending, IDEA was already in play, but we were sending those students out of district. So that also impacted our space needs. Another thing, healthy, it was stated that there was no data cited that healthy air impacted student learning or something like that, or something about a healthy building. So I just wanted to note that part of the citing your sources, the T.H. Chan Harvard School of Public Health has a extensive report on the school building impacts on student health, thinking, and performance. I did send this to the Ways and Means Committee in November. The next thing that I wanted to hit on was just this, I feel like we have 2 arguments here. One that's they didn't take care of the schools. The other is we've been paying for these schools. Where's our money going? And I just want to say the residents of this town have supported Amherst for decades. They've supported Amherst schools, and I don't want anyone to diminish that. Our district has done, the reason our buildings are the age they are today is because they have been maintained and they're past the point of maintenance at this stage. We have to do something beyond just patching the roof when it leaks, right? So in terms of the money that our town has paid into it, they have favored smaller projects over larger ones. So 20 years ago, we were trying to get a 4th and 5th grade building. That building did not pass. The annex at AMS did. And at the time, the plan was then for eventually an elementary school to be built to bring those 5th graders back. I'm rambling now, but thank you for your time. Yep.
All right. Okay. Hold on a second. So we are now 2 hours in. Do you have anything new to add to this debate?
Me?
All right, I'll recognize these 2 people and then we'll move on to the next warrant article.
I just want to, my name is Marie Panciaco. I'm on Amherst Street. I've been here a property owner and taxpayer for 40 years. Just want to add a little commentary to help the perspective of what you're feeling as the tone in the community. And I agree with the last speaker that we have supported the schools for as long as I've been here, continually voting yes, 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 until the last year. And now everybody seems to be surprised that we're finally saying, let's slow down, stop, and take a look at things. I understand the timing. Obviously, the school needs some work. But with all the talk about affordable housing in Amherst, the irony is not lost, at least on me, that we're here tonight discussing a proposal that's going to make the people that live here or the housing in Amherst much less affordable for those of us that have made our home here. Right now, this warrant article represents a 10% increase on the median home property tax here, 10%. And I think everybody can conclude that this is the first in an avalanche of bonds that are going to be coming our way. The average taxes that are paid on a home in Amherst represent 50% of the average annual payout of a Social Security recipient. 50% for one thing. That said, most retirees here in town didn't accumulate their nest eggs through inheritance or through lottery winnings. They saved, they planned, and they converted a pot of money into a stream of income. Over the last several years, I have seen several of my long-term neighbors move from town, not because they didn't have the money to pay their taxes, but they couldn't justify a double-digit expenditure on their budget for one item in this escalating tax culture. It's just, people can't afford. We're going to push a lot of people out of town with this.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know what the solution is, but we need to find a better one.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, ma'am, and you'll be the last speaker to this warrant article, okay?
Thanks, Kelly Bennett, Crestwood Court. I am a parent of 2 children in the middle school and in Wilkins. I'm also a kindergarten teacher at Clark School. Just going to put the numbers out there. I have 21 5-year-olds in my class this year. We are all at 20 and 21. There's been a lot of conversation about test scores and who's doing great and we got to prove ourselves. The conditions are not great. And if you think that by waiting and prolonging this need, which we have in our facilities, by pushing this off and asking for more credibility and weighing all this, my concern is what's happening with all these kids while we're waiting. We have kids coming through already. You're talking 2026. That's a lot of kids coming through. What are we doing to best support them in these couple years? So I ask you to consider how we've got a volunteer-based committee that's doing so much work for us, and yet we're questioning and analyzing every little bit of volunteer time that they've done. I appreciate the people who are stepping up and who are looking through information and data and statistics, but the reality is we are in a dire situation in our schools and we need help now.
Okay, thank you. All right. So in the interest of time, no, Greg, I'm sorry, thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to instruct the clerk to place the warrant article on the warrant as written. Is there a motion to restrict reconsideration? I see motion from Mr. Coughlin. Is there a second? From what's that? Okay, go ahead. I
wasn't sure.
I can't see. I'm sorry. My vision's gotten really bad in the 9 years that I've done this. Beth Kuzma to second. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, so ordered.